Dear brothers and sisters in Christ, on the 9th of November, the Holy Church commemorates our Holy Mother Matrona of Perge and Constantinople. Marriage and Motherhood. Matrona, our Holy Mother, lived and flourished during the reigns of Emperors Theodosius II, 408 to 450, Marcian, 450-457, and Leo I, 457-474. Matrona was the daughter of a noble and wealthy parents from Perge of Pamphylia, a rich, populous, and cosmopolitan city. Matrona was carefully raised by her parents until she reached marriageable age. Since she was attractive and had admirers, her parents arranged a marriage for her to a young and affluent nobleman named Domitianus. Their marriage produced one daughter, Theodote, whose name means given by God. This name appears to be according to God's economy, because in the future her ever memorable mother would dedicate her to God. After the saint gave birth to Theodote, Matrona led a remarkable life, having all her mind and thoughts upon divine matters. She considered those temporary and earthly good things as a shadow and a dream, which is quite true. She pondered upon abandoning home, family, and all in order, according to the gospel verse, to buy the pearl of great price. Matrona at Constantinople. At length Matrona made a pretext to her husband that it was necessary to go to Constantinople. Therefore they journeyed together, since Domitianus would not let her travel alone. She was only 15 years old and very beautiful. When they arrived in the capital of Byzantium, Matrona went and worshipped in the holy churches. On her many pilgrimages, she had as her companion a certain noblewoman named Evgenia, with whom she shared all her secrets, whereas Evgenia would kindle even greater divine love in the young woman's heart. The woman often went to the vigils of the church feasts. Matrona would entreat God to help her overcome the stumbling blocks of the flesh. At that time she was experiencing fierce carnal warfare. Thus ofttimes she begged God to give her the strength to strike down the temptation. Now Domitianus took note that his wife was missing most evenings, and he became offended. He then uttered wicked words, suggesting that she was committing some indiscretion. Therefore he no longer would let her leave their house. The sorrow of Matrona was immeasurable, because she was deprived of the holy gatherings of the Christians. Therefore every hour she prayed to God to release her from her husband, so she might labor only for him, just as it was ordained. Only by her persistence was she able to persuade her spouse to give her permission to go to the church of the holy apostles to attend the all-night prayer vigil. It was there that Matrona remained inside the cell of a virtuous nun, Mother Susanna, who from a very young age had been a consecrated virgin. Therefore, Mother Susanna, Matrona, and Evgenia conducted a vigil. In the morning Matrona disclosed to the others her desire to become a nun and to leave her husband. Evgenia then said, "And what shall become of thy daughter?" Matrona answered, "First, I shall commend Theodote to God, and second, I shall leave her in the hands of the pious Susanna, who shall care for her." After saying this, she supplicated the Lord with all her heart to enlighten her and endow her with strength to do what was beneficial. The following night she beheld a vision wherein her husband was pursuing her, but she was kept by monks in a certain monastery. By this vision Matrona understood that it was God's will for her to become a nun. Matrona at the monastery. Straightway she cut her hair and dressed in men's clothing, appearing as a eunuch, to confirm whether her actions were God-pleasing, she returned to the church of the holy apostles and opened the holy gospel to see what she might find. The first verse she read was, "Whosoever is willing to follow after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross, and keep on following me." Upon reading this verse, she rejoiced exceedingly and bade farewell to her teacher Evgenia. Matrona then repaired to the monastery of a virtuous elder named Vassianos, whom she told her name was Babylos. The monks accepted her into their brotherhood. At length, adorned with achieving so many virtues, she surpassed the others in the brotherhood. They all marveled to see how one eunuch prevailed over them in the struggles and toils of asceticism. The Blessed One was never angry with anyone, and she never offended anyone. In fact, she submitted to all with remarkable humility, abundantly serving all. Thereupon all revered her, honoring her as a teacher and desiring to emulate her life. Her feminine appearance brought questions to mind. However, when Matrona, that is, Father Babylos, was digging in the garden with Barnabas, she recently had left the outside world. Being one untrained, Barnabas endeavored to understand why Babylos' ears were pierced. When he asked her the reason, the holy woman, as one wise, answered, "Thou must, O brother, keep thy head down as a monk, and not be curious about another person. However, since thou hast questioned me, I shall tell thee the reason. My mother loved me very much, and priding herself, she thought it good, when I was small, to hang gold earrings from my ears." Thus the Blessed Woman allayed the brother's suspicions with that expert answer. Matrona often remembered the words of Evgenia, who said that it would be difficult and incongruous for a woman to associate with men and keep it a secret to the end. Nevertheless, Matrona often prayed to God, saying, "With thy will, O Lord, invested with this monastic schema, eagerly shall I follow thee, as thou hast commanded. Therefore, do not turn away from thy handmaiden, but do thou strengthen me to accomplish my desire successfully to the end." Thus she spent several years, manfully struggling against the demons, without anyone knowing that she was a woman, until God chose to reveal it. At length the secret was made manifest to the abbot, when God vouchsafed him a vision. The abbot beheld a dignified and divine countenance, saying unto him, "Know this, O Vassianos, that the monk Babylos is a woman, who is disguised as a eunuch, so it might not be known." In like manner, another renowned and devout monk, named Acacius, beheld the same vision. That morning Vassianus, with a fierce eye, questioned the holy woman, asking her how she dared to live the communal life with so many men. He said it was a perilous undertaking, and moreover forbidden. With utter humility, Matrona disclosed everything to the abbot. Therefore, the abbot admonished the holy woman and commanded her to preserve as much as possible the angelic schema with which he vested her. He counseled her to possess patience until the end, so she might receive the crown of asceticism from the Lord. Matrona leaves the monastery. The holy woman then received the forgiveness from all and departed. She returned to her beloved mother Susanna. Upon meeting with her, she discovered that her daughter had died. The Blessed Matrona then gave thanks unto God for delivering her from this concern, so she might labor untroubled. Matrona was confident that her child Theodote was spiritually prepared when she was translated to the Lord. Thereupon she remained with Mother Susanna, and they followed a virtuous manner of life. Meanwhile, Domitianus ran hither and thither, seeking his wife in many quarters and convents. Since her fame had spread everywhere, he finally learned that she had been tonsured at the monastery of Vassianos. Therefore, wishing to vent his anger, he went to the monastery. He rebuked the monks with uncontrolled anger, claiming that they separated wives from their husbands. After he had demanded that they return his beloved spouse, they explained the matter to him and said, "We, brother, as God is our witness, have no woman here, since it is prohibited by the Holy Fathers. We know nothing regarding the matter of thy wife. There was a eunuch named Babylas, who came and spent a little time here and then departed, saying that he was going to Jerusalem. Thereupon Domitianus departed very sorrowfully, since he did not attain his desire. The elder meanwhile had Matrona in his thoughts, because peradventure her husband should find her and hinder her salvation. Therefore he addressed the brethren, saying, I know, O brethren, that we shall commit a great sin if we do not look after this nun, who, though she is a woman, spent a long time with us, and diligently labored on our behalf. The deacon Marcellos then said, in our country of Emesa, Syria, there is an ascetical retreat for women. I also have a sister in this community. If thou dost wish, I shall go and find Matrona, so she might retire to that convent. After the superior gave him permission, the deacon found and brought Matrona to that convent in a fast-sailing galley. Matrona at Emesa. At that holy retreat, Mother Matrona advanced spiritually in so many virtues that the others had her as an archetype, worthy of all emulation. However, as much as she was humble and hid her virtue, so much more did the Lord make manifest Matrona, the beacon of virtue. While some were illumined by her light, others benefited solely by her presence. The finding of the head of St. John the Baptist. At that time, while a farmer was working in the field, he beheld a fire issue forth from the earth where there was a cave and monastery. When Bishop Uranius of Emesa was told of the miraculous fire, he went with members of his clergy to the cave. After he had prayed, the bishop ordered that the men dig in that place. After the order was carried out, they found a vessel containing not gold or silver, which those infected with avarice would desire, but instead a heavenly treasure. It was the august head of St. John the Baptist. News of this discovery sped throughout those parts, bringing many pilgrims, including clergy, monastics, and lay people to the church. Therefore, our holy Matrona and the other nuns of her convent approached to venerate the august head. A fragrant myrrh emanated from the relics. The priest anointed the foreheads of the faithful as a blessing. Matrona took a fine handkerchief and touched the precious relics with it. Meanwhile, a crowd of people pressed on all sides to enter the church. As the holy Matrona exited, people asked her to anoint them with the myrrh, because they could not reach the priests. Among those that asked to be anointed, there was a man blind from his birth. He left the crowds before the priests and approached the holy woman, requesting that for the Lord's sake she might anoint him. She hearkened to his request and anointed him, making the sign of the cross over his eyes. Straightway, O extraordinary wonder working, he who was formerly blind received his sight. Then in a loud voice before all, he proclaimed the holy nun, whom certain people knew to have spent years in a men's monastery. Domitianus at Emesa. Not much time elapsed before this event had echoed throughout the region, and Domitianus heard the report. Wondering if it was his wife that was being acclaimed, he hastened to the convent at Emesa. Upon arriving, he pretended that he was a stranger, since the nuns would not permit a man entry. He requested that Matrona come to the door, so he might receive her blessing. Since the good fame of Mother Matrona had spread abroad and many revered her, the nuns went to make the request known to her. The Blessed Matrona, after carefully questioning the nuns about the man's characteristics and age, perceived him to be her husband. She ordered that he was to remain 7 days outside, and then she would come out and speak with him. Thus Domitianus waited the prescribed time, hoping to see that much desired countenance. Meanwhile, the Blessed Matrona secretly fled to Jerusalem, taking nothing with her, only a little bread and her hair shirt. The saint at Beirut. When Domitianus realized that she had fled, he sorrowed. Again, however, he hastened after her. He learned from certain women, according to what they heard, that an apprehensive Matrona had concealed herself inside an idol temple at Beirut. This is because the holy nun deemed it better to keep company with beasts and demons, which could only injure the flesh, than to be found by her husband, who could harm her soul and virtue. However, from this point forward, we no longer hear of her husband's hot pursuit. The saint's hagiographer does not record what became of him. Matrona, meanwhile, delighting in divine solitude, dwelt in the pagan altar, a precinct of demons, for a certain number of days, passing the time reading her services. She heard the demons also making noises, singing their own songs, as she chanted hymns and prayed. She wondered at this phenomenon and entreated the Lord to reveal them to her. She then clearly beheld demons holding fire and screaming in a disorderly manner. She rebuked them, and they scattered as smoke. Besieged terribly with thirst, the holy woman went out of the temple and collected some herbs, so she might moisten her tongue. However, the Lord, who fed so many ungrateful multitudes in the wilderness with manna, also gave drink and prepared a table near at hand for his handmaiden in that harsh place. She found in a certain spot a hot spring. Then, with a sharp rock, the resourceful Matrona dug a little pond, which filled with sweet water. She also found edible greens and herbs, which she ate, offering thanksgiving to the Lord. The deceitful demon, observing the great patience of the holy woman, envied the benefit that her soul received. Therefore, the demon assumed the appearance of a woman, beautiful and fair of form. The phantom claimed to counsel the nun about what was in her interest, and said, "Why, my lady, dost thou dwell in such a dark and intolerable place? Thou art young, tender, and beautiful, accustomed to being pampered. Indeed, in this large and remote place thou canst not even find food. Therefore I fear that perhaps thou wilt weaken and sicken from the great hardship. Peradventure thou wilt disdain asceticism, and turn back, setting thy heart upon incontinence, though thou now dost incline toward continence. Therefore, do what I say, and go into the countryside, that thou mightest find a quiet retreat. Once there, thou shalt better struggle, and find whatever thou needest to manage." The holy woman, as one prudent, perceived the treacherous design in such advice. She would not countenance these words in the least, deeming them the foolishness of the deceitful one. The inexorable demon, however, did not leave off at this point from his wickedness. He next took on the appearance of an old sorceress. The old woman's eyes appeared to be emitting fire as she spoke terrible and unseemly words to Matrona. The holy woman, the adornment of solitaries, refused to even look upon her, neither did she take seriously the threats. The old woman, becoming more fierce, shouted, "Know this, that if thou wilt not move from here now, in thine old age I shall wage a mightier and more savage war against thee, that will strike thee down. Even now I shall not leave thee completely at rest, but I shall bring charges against thee before the inhabitants of Beirut, that thou dost scorn their temple. Then they shall drive thee out." These were the ineffective words of the frantic and vain boaster, the hater of mankind. However, our God, who loves mankind, strengthened his handmaiden. He endowed her with divine vision and with consolation that gladdened her soul, in accordance with the words of Christ's ancestor, "O Lord, according to the multitude of my griefs in my heart, thy consolations gladdened my soul." One evening, when Matrona was praying, there appeared 3 men who were chanting for a long time and making prostrations. When the holy woman beheld them, she marveled and asked them their identity. Meekly, calmly, and with tenderness they answered, "Pray to God on our benefit." Then they then disappeared. The significance of this appearance will be explained shortly. Meanwhile, the fame of the saint spread to those parts. Many pilgrims came desiring to see her and listen to her divine and wonderful words, which benefited many. Sophrony and F.G. Once, an honorable and prudent woman named Sophrony came to the saint. Though she was an idolater, yet she disavowed her ancestral impiety and assented to the teaching of the gospel. She came with certain other women to dwell with the holy woman and to emulate her manner of life. Within a short time, these women were baptized. A virgin priestess of the idols also came to their group. When she heard and beheld the virtues of the saint, she disdained the polytheistic imposture, and as one sensible, she renounced the falsely named deities. She then distributed her wealth among the poor and remained in subjection to Mother Matrona until her repose. When the day arrived when the Greek pagans made sacrifices, they did not find their priestess. Benighted in the pagan deception, they sought her in every quarter. Her parents were questioned about the whereabouts of their daughter. They told them that she was with the nun Matrona. Therefore they went and despitefully used her, saying, "Why hast thou, O mindless one, abandoned thy previous honor and come to this despicable end, wearing black clothes of mourning? Know this, if thou wilt not come as quickly as possible to offer sacrifice unto the deities according to custom, all the people shall come to burn thee." The blessed Matrona spoke to them with meekness, saying, "Leave her, because she is no longer the priestess of the deities. She is now the handmaid and pure bride of the true and only God." On hearing this, they departed. The young maiden then fell before the feet of the holy woman and begged her to count her worthy of sacred baptism. After the saint had the bishop come with a priest and a deacon, Matrona committed the maiden into their hands for holy baptism. After the former priestess received the mystery of holy baptism, she was named Effigy. Upon returning to Mother Matrona, she struggled ascetically alongside her in every labor. The sisterhood also included 8 other ascetics, who initially came to see Matrona and then chose to remain with her. They discovered that she spoke sweetly and overflowed with divine grace. In fact, when the holy woman spoke, it was impossible to depart from her. The vision of the 3 men. Mother Matrona had a desire to locate once again Father Vassianos, who was then in the capital, Constantinople. However, Matrona still feared her husband might also find her at the men's monastery. Then she thought to go to Alexandria or Antioch. Thus she had 3 choices before her: Constantinople, Alexandria, or Antioch. She entreated the Lord to reveal her which was most advantageous. That night, in a vision, she again saw 3 men who appeared to be vying for a woman. When the holy woman asked them their names, she learned that the youngest was named Constantine, the other Alexander, and the third Antiochus. The saint, perceiving the significance of their names, said to them, "Take lots to see who shall have me." This took place, and the lot fell to Constantine. The holy woman then awoke from her sleep. Thereupon, from that vision, she knew that it was God's will that she go to Constantinople. When she disclosed her plans to the other nuns, they attempted to prevent Matrona from sailing. They did not wish to be deprived of her, and thus endanger their souls. The saint mentioned this to the bishop. He sent 2 virtuous deaconesses who took care of the ascetic spiritual and physical requirements. Mother Matrona exhorted them in how to conduct themselves. She then bade them farewell, taking with her only Mother Sophrony. They entered into a ship and set sail for the capital. Matrona in the capital. Due to favorable conditions, they arrived speedily in Byzantium. After Mother Matrona located the holy Vassianos with Deacon Marcellos, she related in detail all that she had experienced. Saint Vassianos then found a suitable cell for her to find solitude. He next wrote a letter to those nuns that Matrona left behind in Beirut. Since they were in obedience to their spiritual mother, Matrona, he invited them to dwell with her in the capital. The nuns from Beirut arrived, and in time other women from Byzantium, after hearing of the fame of Matrona, also joined that pious assembly. Many flocked to listen to her sweet and nectar-like teachings. Matrona, as a melodious bird sweetly lifting its voice in the meadow of fasting, attracted an assemblage of most holy women. The noetic sparrows, they escaped the net of the enemy by the aid of the Spirit. Not only poor woman came, but even the Empress Verena, the wife of Emperor Leo I, visited. Verena held Mother Matrona in honor and glorified in her meeting with the holy woman. She marveled at the piety and virtues of Mother Matrona. Verena requested that Matrona accept her gift, but the blessed woman declined, since she placed all her hopes in God. The righteous one also performed many miracles in the capital. We wish to relate only one for the sake of brevity, that will prove sufficient to demonstrate the others. The patrician's wife. Antiochiane, the wife of the nobleman and patrician Sforakios, had a grave illness. She spent a great sum of money upon physicians' fees, but received no benefit. Eventually, she heard of the blessed Matrona, who healed many of the infirm, not only of bodily ills, but also spiritual sicknesses, and this thus led many of the impious to piety. The patrician woman, after having met a woman named Euphemia, the wife of Governor Anthemos, a beloved acquaintance of the saint, went to visit Matrona. The women spent a long while conversing with the saint, hoping to procure the divine favor by the saint's mediation. The sick woman then took the right hand of Matrona. Antiochian then placed Matrona's hand upon that bodily member where she was suffering from the incurable sickness. Straightway the pangs diminished and then ceased. The patrician woman then disclosed her medical problem to the saint. Matrona, desiring to ascribe the healing to God, with total modesty of spirit, said, "May the Lord, my lady, as the Almighty, heal thee, because I am unworthy to work such miracles, such wonders." With these words, the patrician woman again felt relief from her illness. Thereupon she desired to remain with Matrona for a certain number of days until she was completely cured. Antiochian then ordered that the pack saddles be taken from the mules, and that the animals bed down for the night. The saint then said that she had neither a barn nor a place for the animals to remain. There were quarters nearby, however, that could be rented for a price. When the noblewoman Antiochian heard this, she then promised to give the saint many buildings in a certain excellent location. Moreover, whatsoever else was needed, she diligently provided. By the Holy Spirit, the saint thought how many souls would be saved through this generosity. Therefore she consented and sent Deacon Marcellos to survey the land and see if it was appropriate for their needs. After observing the property and the buildings, the deacon highly recommended the site to the saint, saying that the place was extremely beautiful and nearby the sea. Furthermore, opposite the property and to the right of the monastery of Vasianos. Thus the holy woman accepted the gift of the patrician woman. After Antiochian made the legal transfer of property, instantly she was completely healed, without trace of the illness remaining. After this, the patrician woman lavished on the property very large sums of money. She refurbished it and bestowed much care upon the decoration of the buildings. Antiochian also constructed a church for the sake of her soul. As for Mother Matrona, even though she changed her abode, she did not relax her former manner of life. In fact, she increased her struggles to the benefit of many souls. Athanasia. One day it happened that two of the saint's sisters, according to the flesh, who were distinguished and wealthy, visited the convent after celebrating the feast of St. Lawrence, which is commemorated by the Holy Church on the 10th of August. One of the sisters, named Athanasia, greatly revered Abbess Matrona. She admired her character, piety, and sweet words that delighted the ears of those that love God. Athirst for her teachings, Athanasia then expressed a desire to become a disciple of the holy abbess. Matrona said to her sister, "Go, my sister, to our house, because I no longer take an interest in husband, home, and relatives. For the Creator have I denied all the created things. I prefer to find myself in the house of God rather than to have temporal success, prosperity, and advantages in the world. The other sister then interfered and said that Matrona's words lacked knowledge and that they were illogical and light-minded. She said they were words that later would turn against Matrona. The holy woman then praised Athanasia's good-intentioned words, but she would not allow her sister to remain inside the convent and said, "Go, my child, and ask thy husband's consent to remain chaste from marital relations for a sufficient time, so thou mightest concentrate upon our conduct of life. Later, when thou hast been tested, and thou dost see that thou art able to endure the burdens of the schema, return, and we shall tonsure thee." When Athanasia heard this, she was sorry because Matrona would not keep her at the convent. However, not wishing to disobey her command, she went to live a life of self-control and discipline, abstaining from meats and other worldly pleasures. So her husband might not hinder her, she visited a property located in the countryside. Confined therein, Athanasia allotted time to fasting, praying, and emulating Matrona's lofty manner of life. At length, through these austerities, she became as the ascetics of the convent. Athanasia's husband, an immoral and wanton man, in the absence of his wife, fulfilled his desires, and sold everything she had and devoured the proceeds. When Athanasia found this out, she used it as a reasonable pretext to leave him. Whatever property remained, she then gave to Matrona, saying, "Take these things of mine, preserve them in paradise, and govern my soul so that I, the wretched one, may not be condemned." After the holy abbess received Athanasia into the sisterhood, she considered what to do with the money that Athanasia entrusted with her. Thereupon she thought to ask Abbot Vesianus his opinion, and he told her to keep it. Therefore the monies were spent on the upkeep of the convent. They also went toward buildings a fortified wall that encompassed the convent. Moreover, they constructed as many cells as they needed, together with a second church and other useful articles. Whatever silver was left over was distributed among the convents of Jerusalem. This latter task was carefully carried out by Deacon Marcellus. Hence the blessed Athanasia wisely distributed and spent the abundance of her riches, thus inheriting the kingdom of the heavens. Her earthly sojourn in the monastic life continued for 14 years. Thus, by enduring temporary hardship, she was counted worthy of everlasting blessedness. The saint's final days. After Mother Matrona expanded the convent, the splendor of her achievements shone forth. She received other women into the convent, thus increasing the rational flock. The holy woman taught and advised them how to conduct themselves after her departure from this life, which she foreknew many days in advance. The holy abbess, though in an aged body, still contended as a youth, undertaking greater struggles and never neglecting any part of her monastic rule. With labor and many pains, she gave birth to spiritual fruits of virtue, eagerly harvesting them that she might enjoy an abundant crop. Thus she led to God a choir of virgins. The rich rewarder and bestower of gifts, therefore, willed to reveal to her a vision of the future, so she might have a foretaste of how much she would inherit and enjoy in paradise. In her vision, Mother Matrona found herself in a most beautiful environment, with diverse trees and sweet flowing fountains. All that she observed was pleasant and delightful, which gave her great joy. In this place she beheld certain women, whose countenances bespoke their virtue. These same women showed Matrona a beautiful and splendid house, which could not be made by the hand of man, nor was it possible to describe its design and construction. The young women then said to Matrona, "This house has been dedicated for thee as a dwelling place." When the saint awakened, she related her vision and prepared herself as was fitting. She then received forgiveness from all the nuns, and then departed to that everlasting journey abroad. She surrendered her blessed soul into the hands of God at 100 years of age. Thus, after renouncing the world as a mere 15-year-old, she lived 85 years as an athlete in spiritual contents. She contended against the devils courageously and valiantly to the glory of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and the coessential and undivided Trinity, to whom is due dominion, honor, and worship unto the ages of ages. Amen.